Good morning, everyone. I should think of like a little intro thing, don't I? Where I go, blah, blah, oh, it's just a businessman time or whatever. But no, still struggling with the hay fever. So it's bad today. I've been sneezing, sneezing, sneezing. Yeah, just had an antihistamine. That's what I'd do. That's what I'd suggest you do if you've got hay fever. I hope I find you well. I hope I find you ready to learn. I hope I find you excited about today's stream, as I always am. To you know, to be honest, I was more enthusiastic, more excited about it 6 weeks ago than I am now. But no, I'm enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying it as much as you can, and making use of your time as well. As much as you can when we're out and when we're doing this. I think it's weird that, do you not think that a lot of people always complain that they don't get enough holidays, and now that they've got holidays, and I know it's not a normal holiday in terms of you can't just go out with their friends or meet people or whatever it is that they do, but yeah, lots of people complain, don't they? They love a complaint. They love to complain, don't they? It doesn't even matter what it is; they just love complaining. But I suppose that's what I'm doing right now. So case in point, innit? So we're going to have a little look at location today. It's not a massive one. It's not absolutely huge or anything like that, but it is something, and a lot of the stuff is already in the book that you can have a look at, or accessible online. So we're not going to go into too much detail about stuff, but it is something that I do want to cover with you. And then we're going to have a look at a question at the end about sort of a past paper question as well, just to sort of see how I would answer one of these and things like that. But so it's not going to be a crazy detailed one today. It's not going to be a crazy long one. In fact, we might even just cut it down to a slightly less of a stream today, because it seems little point on really ragging you about and spending too much time on it. So without further ado, anyway, let's get into it. And sooner we're done, sooner we're there, sooner we're done, aren't we? Sooner we're there, sooner we're done. So this is location. Now, location, you might think, isn't really an important thing to business, but you'd be dead wrong, because it is one of the most fundamental things that you can sort of have in business whilst, it's one of those things that can be ignored quite effectively, because people don't think about them a lot. The people don't spend the time, thinking about where they're going to locate the business. They usually have quite strong opinions about it, but it doesn't really come from anywhere. It doesn't really come from market research and things like that. They seem to just go in with this really strong, gut feeling of where they've got it, and it could be because they want, a shop that's in a certain town, or it could be because they want some kind of service or something that they want to work from home or whatever. So location can sometimes be a secondary thing, because it's kind of intertwined with the entrepreneur's beliefs on what they want to be doing with everything else, essentially. So it is something that can be quite effectively missed, and underestimated the power of it. But then again, a lot of entrepreneurs have come unstuck because they've chosen the wrong location. So it's important to speak about. Let's have a look at it. So explain the factors that need to be considered when locating a new business. Analyze the factors in relation to the needs of the business, and evaluate the choice of different locations. So we've got the same thing as we always do, haven't we? Those same skills that we try and develop: explain, analyze, evaluate. Explain is literally, as we've got that AO3 chain, haven't we? Analyzing with that AO3, we've got we don't just want to just explain what the actual concept is, because if we were doing that, that would be AO1. If we want to analyze it, if we want to give a bit more depth, we've got that nice AO3 chain as well, hopefully coming in. And evaluating is your AO4, isn't it? So we've got that same thing, and it's always going to be the same, isn't it? It's always going to be the same thing that's continuous, and keep repeating that. So let's have a look at these to begin with. We've got 4 different options. We've got a surfing instructor, a clothes shop, a call centre, and a car tyre manufacturer, or a car tyre manufacturer, as it looks like on here. So what is it on here? Like, let's have a think about location. Let's have a think about what we would do for these things. And let's just make our best guess on what we think would be reasonable for these things. Okay, so let's have a think about surfing instructor. Well, to begin with, suggested location. Well, let's go for something really, really obvious. Do you not think that maybe by the sea might be a good idea? And especially not just anywhere, perhaps it would be somewhere with waves. So, probably somewhere Plymouth way, right down the edge of the coast. Or there's a couple of places down there, isn't it? Newquay, that would be a good place. Newquay's known for surfing in the UK and things like that. How do I know that? Well, it's just something that I've picked up over time, but I do know I have a friend who does it, so I know about that. But that had come from market research. Would you know that? Would you know where to do that, or would you just put it anywhere? I don't know. Is there any way that we could do indoor surfing? Well, I don't know. Perhaps, potentially, if there is, if we've got the technology to be able to do it, then perhaps that would significantly change our location, wouldn't it? That would significantly affect where we could put the location of this business. We could effectively put it anywhere then, if we had one of those wave machines or something like that. So, surfing instructor, we'd need it probably at Newquay, probably at something Plymouth, something like that, right down near the coast. Why? The justification is because it would be close to waves. So you would literally be able to do your product. It would be close to people and potential consumers, customers who want to purchase and want to take part in surfing, wouldn't it? So you would be attracting the right people at the right time and providing a product to the right audience, essentially. So there we go. What about a clothes shop? Well, the clothes shop's a different one. The clothes shop's more of your AO4. You need to be thinking of the circumstance. What kind of clothes shop is it? Is it a really high-end one? Is it a really low-end one? Is it really like a middling one? Is it, when we say clothes, so is it the Nike shop? Because at the Nike store would be significantly different location than, just a little boutique, something selling Louboutins or something like that. Something really, really expensive, exclusive shoes. Can you see, where would you put a Nike store then? I would put a Nike store, dead centre in a big city. So I know that there's a Nike store in Glasgow, city centre. I know that there's a Nike store in the middle of London, and it seems sensible because you're going to get a lot of people come in. They're willing to pay a premium, that kind of stuff, to buy these products and things like that. So yes, that would make more sense because we want to get that through traffic, don't we? People will travel for the Nike store. If it was somewhere with a boutique place, if it was somewhere quite unusual, somewhere selling Louboutins or something like that, I don't know any other very high-end women's shoes. But if we were to go with those, it would be unlikely we'd put that on a high street. We'd be more likely to put that in a very high-end part of town. So if you go to somewhere like very, very high-end bits of London, they tend to have very high-end shops together. So you'll have jewelers, you'll have very high-end clothing outlets, you'll have maybe car showrooms with things like Jaguars and Mercedes and Audis and that and Ferraris or whatever it is, Porsche. They're not just going to be, an Arnold Clark or an Evans Alshaw or something like that. It's not going to happen, is it? So you've got to think, wherever your clothes shop's going to be, you need to be thinking about what's the consumer for it, and are you looking at passing trade, or are you looking for people to come out of the way to go to your thing? And remember, if you got something that sold very, very luxurious products and put it in the middle of a town centre or a city centre, not only would you be affecting the likelihood of you being able to get the right clientele in, but also you'd be massively affecting the reputation of the business, because you don't want everyone walking around in Louboutins, because if you did, then the speciality that you don't want everybody walking around in Gucci. If everybody did, then there'd be no point of Gucci anymore, would there? It's supposed to be exclusive. It's supposed to be a bit special. It's supposed to be something that you don't get, that only the uber rich, the ultra in society can actually afford. What about a call centre? Well, a call centre can realistically be placed anywhere, can't it? So what would we be factoring around? Well, I'd be thinking about cost. If I was Nike store and put it in the middle of Glasgow city centre, that would be extremely expensive to get that building. Whether they're renting it or anything, it's going to be extremely expensive. Whereas a call centre, there is no need to put that in an accessible place. The only thing that you do need to be thinking of, it's got to have infrastructure around it. Infrastructure as in sort of roads and and transport and things like that, because you've still got to be able to get your staff in and out, haven't you? So whilst it's not really an issue for your customers, it is an issue for your your staff, so that you're gonna have to make sure that they can get to you. So I would be looking at a really, really minimal thing, just a back office somewhere in the middle of, it can be anywhere. It can be on an industrial estate. It can be in the middle of, a town, but, in a rough area, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter where you put it. Because, or even, these, they talk about foreign countries, don't they? Because it's cheaper labour and things like that. Yes, it can affect the brand image, and yes, it can affect the customer service levels and things like that. At no fault of their own of the people who are trying. I usually find the people who are on foreign call centre things are trying their best. Just is an issue with language sometimes. Which I think is funny as well, isn't it? We don't take any opportunity to learn any other foreign language, and then we have a go at other people if they don't know English perfectly, because we're so good at England, aren't we? We are so good at speaking England. But what about a car tyre manufacturer? Well, what I'd be thinking about this one is just a place with really good infrastructure, place that was not too far away from potential customers, but wherever it is, it's the infrastructure that's the main thing for the location for this. So I'd be looking at, I know Birmingham, for example, is a really good place where they do make a lot of cars. On saying that, they may not do now because of this whole situation, but Jaguar Land Rover is in Birmingham. So if you could find somewhere that has a lot of car dealerships or a lot of car manufacturer places would be better. Then we could put our car tyre manufacturer near those, and then hopefully it would minimise the time that we would have to take and transportation costs of getting those over, aren't they? Because they're kind of products that you would use in the production of other products, except if you were going to sell them, retrospectively to consumers. So let's just have a look at these. These are something that you can put down in your book. You've got a range of different things that sort of impact on location. So I'm not going to spend ages on each one of them, but let's have a look through them. Okay, so we've got access to markets. Access to markets is like I was saying. So do you have physical access to your consumer? Does your consumer have physical access to you? Okay, how easy is it for them to access you? Can it be done online? Does it really have to be face-to-face or something like that? What about your competition? Now, competition is an interesting one with location, because you'd think that you'd want to locate yourself completely out of the way, away from your competitors, but it's not true, because for your competitors, you can. There is a massive advantage to you putting yourself close to your competitors. Why is that? Well, if you're a clothes shop and you are a high end one, you will put yourself near the other high end ones, because you're going to get a certain clientele coming to your shop, but also to the other shops as well, aren't they? So there is a big advantage to sometimes, why do you get all the fast food restaurants all going together? You'll see a McDonald's, and then right across the road you'll see a KFC. Well, the idea is that they're trying to remove any obstruction from you going and add a bit of choice, aren't they? So if you go to a McDonald's and think, oh, I'm really in the mood for a Big Mac today, and then get there and then think, oh, actually KFC smells good. Oh yeah, oh there's a big queue at McDonald's. There's a KFC there. I'll go there. Although, what is it with KFC and fast food? It's not fast food from KFC, is it? It takes some ages to do anything. Although I have to say McDonald's has been going down on that as well. Availability of labour. There's a big impact on your ability to actually satisfy the needs of the business if you can't physically get the people around. So if you need a lot of people, you might need to locate your business in somewhere where there is quite high unemployment, depending on the type of business and the skills and qualifications needed as well. There might be a situation where you have to put it somewhere, because there is only a certain type of person who you can take, or you need really high-end qualified people, and they all congregate in certain areas. So there's an argument for it, isn't there? What about your suppliers? Okay, do you want to be miles and miles away from your suppliers? If you do, then it's going to affect your capacity. It's going to affect your ability to respond to economic changes, to external factors and things like that. We can't always massively respond to these things, but being close to our suppliers is going to quite help us, isn't it? So that, along with our infrastructure, as I said, is our roads, our ability to get from A to B effectively. We want to be able to order something and have it straight away, don't we, if we could? So perfect scenario, like if you're a car manufacturer or whatever it is, you might need some replacement bulbs for the headlights. You want to be able to order them and quickly receive them. We're worse with consumers, aren't we? We want think about Amazon, where they do their main thing for their location is infrastructure. They need to be located in places where it's easy for them to get massive trucks in and out, in and out, in and out all the time. Because if they don't, then the competitive advantage, the way that that business gains its advantage and is able to compete, completely falls over. So it's something we need to think about individual for businesses as well, because that's your AO4 when it's coming in, when you're thinking about individual businesses and why it applies more to certain businesses than others. Then we've got the government or EU influence. Obviously, the EU is going to have less influence on us as going forward, whether you love it or hate it. Still think people are very confused about what it was. But the government influence in terms of this, of deciding where they would prefer you to be. They could subsidise you being in certain areas because of unemployment record or unemployment levels in that area. They could give you, tax breaks or anything like that. But they could also make it so you physically couldn't go anywhere else. They could say, like, I know that they said, didn't they, when Amazon, if you look back on, I linked it, the panorama for Amazon back in another stream. But if you look at that one, they actually built a road. The Welsh Assembly built a road called Amazon Way for Amazon, and it cost them millions and millions and millions because they wanted to get them in a certain place. And they wanted to bring them to Wales because it was important to get jobs and things like that for them. So it depends on the circumstance. It depends on the kind of business and what kind of level of employment you're bringing to the area, whether you'll be able to get any subsidies or maybe be pushed into a certain area by government. Cost of land is a big one, isn't it? Going to be a lot more expensive to put yourself on a high street, like I said, than in a back office somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It's very, very expensive land. It's extremely expensive, and the more south you go, the closer to London, it just gets silly. You're talking about millions of pounds for a flat in London. Whereas for millions of pounds, it literally went past yesterday. I went past like a mansion that's just down the road from here. I didn't even know it was there, and that's for sale, and they want like 1.6 million for it. And it's an impressive place, you would say. Like you think, wow, that's what a place. But it's a lot. For 1.6 million, I wonder what you get for 1.6 million in London. I think very little. Probably a flat or something like that, or an apartment, as they like to call them. When did that happen? When did it become an apartment? I just know it's a flat. Doesn't sound as good, does it, for 1.4 million? The image, we've already talked about it a little bit, but the image of the brand. Where do you want to be seen? Do you need to be in places right around the UK? Do you want to be a global brand? Do you want to be all the way around there? Is it something that you can move? Is it something that you have the ability to move? Is it something that you sort of have the ability to sort of, like, are you a physically movable business? Are you on like wheels or something like that? It's, all businesses don't have to hunker down in one location, do they? I always thought that a good idea for a movable business would be Subway having some kind of catering truck. Like, so when you go to festivals and stuff, I don't understand why Subway don't do that, because they could have the front of the vehicle could be like a clear plastic so you could see them making the sandwiches and that, or just make stock sandwiches so you can't get, too much customization with it. But I think they'd make a fortune doing that, because you know how much people pay for festival food. So it's I think that if anyone's listening from Subway, which I'm sure they are, then I'd go with that. We've got the transport links for customers and employees, being able to get to work, being able to get to your shop, services in terms of, are you actually surrounded by stuff? Are you going to make it easier for you to get things? Are you going to, are you near things like police and things like that? Is it accessible by them? Because remember we talked about one of the main costs for businesses, one of the costs that people don't think about is things like security, things like avoiding theft and things like that, and insurances. So are you in a place where the fire service wouldn't be able to get to you? So you've kind of made it so that your whole place has gone up. Is it a place where the police would be able to access you? Have you got a place where you yourself can access services that you need to? And in terms of water, gas, electric, internet, that kind of stuff. Because if you go right in the middle of nowhere, there's not going to be anything plumbed in, is there? And it's something that we can't really avoid now. And the final ones that we're talking about today is raw materials. This will massively be affected by the type of industry that you're in. Remember, AO4 again, keep bringing it back to a certain specific type of industry and evaluating specifically for them. But if you are, a primary business where you are literally in the business of getting, raw materials from the ground, it's going to be massively impacted on you, isn't it? If you're a farmer, you have to be in places where there's fertile land, that there's a good amount of space that you'll be able to farm. Whereas if you're somewhere like Tesco or something like that, it's going to be significantly less important for you to get access to raw materials because they're shipped in, don't they? Probably the infrastructure would be more important for you. Okay, does that make sense? I know we've been through that dead quick, but as I said, it's not something that I think is mind blowing. It's just a case of something that we need to remember, that there's a significant range of factors that affect it. So what's most important to primary, secondary and tertiary? Well, this one's up for argument, isn't it? This is where your evaluation skills come in, and this is where, in the exam they would be testing this. But I think for the primary sector, as we've just said, the raw materials aspect, the nearness to raw materials is a major factor. It's something that we can't really avoid, and it's something that we can't... to underestimate the power of it is silly. Of course, it's the most important thing for primary sector, because primary sector is about the physical, getting raw materials out of the ground, isn't it? What about secondary businesses? Remember, secondary businesses, your manufacturer. What do we think is the most important for them? Well, in terms of that, probably your infrastructure, probably your ability to get things from A to B, because like we said, although Amazon isn't a manufacturer, they require the infrastructure to be able to get things from A to B, much like a manufacturer would do. And also the supplier location as well. So the supplier location being close to you, the supplier location being around you, and them having access to you. So you, in an emergency or in a situation where you need to quickly request something, then you will be able to do that without having to go, oh well, there's a 3-week lead time on this. That's not what we want. We want something here and now if we can, don't we? And then what's most important to the tertiary side of it? Remember, tertiary is your services, is your like your shops and your actual right to consumer things, is your access to your markets, isn't it? So your access to physical people, your access to whether they can come on the internet and get access to you, whether they can come into the store and physically access you, whether you can ring the store, whether you can, all those different forms of access, that we have access to. That's ideal, isn't it? That's the most important. It's got to be. But while we're saying this, this is where this is what they'll be testing in the exam. This is when they'll give you one of these and they'll say, like, what do you think is the most important? And you'll be able to say one of these. You might be able to say supplier location. You might be able to say, like, if we go back to these, you might be able to say any one of these. We might be able to say, any one of them. But ultimately, it's got to be specific to the situation. That's what they're testing at time is can you can you adequately evaluate and give me a reason for these things being the most important at that time. So let's have a little look at this one. It says, for the following, analyse the impact of location will have on these things. So we've got M&S, access to markets, analyse analysis of all of location choice. So what is it? So it says access to markets for M&S. Why is it so important for them to have good access to their markets? Well, because they're a premium brand, aren't they? They're a premium brand that they can't rely on the fact that people are going to go way out of the way. They'll go out of the way to an extent for them. But if they don't have good access to their markets, if they don't have reasonable access to consumers and things like that, then people just aren't going to. People aren't going to travel that far, because remember, to a large extent, they're selling homogenous goods, aren't they? They're selling products which you can buy from other places. You can buy Walker's Crisp from everywhere. Oh yes, okay, you can buy M&S branded stuff that you can only buy from them. But ultimately, a lot of the stuff is homogenous. A lot of the stuff is variations on a theme, isn't it? So that's really, really important for them to make sure that they're not too far away, and also to be seen in a high-class area. You don't want it being in a really rough area, because it'll affect the brand name of that, won't it? Second one's Google, availability of skilled labour. Why is it so important for the location? Well, the location for Google, they are in Silicon Alley. Silicon Valley. Sorry, Silicon Alley. I think that sounds better. Silicon Valley in America. I think it's in California, and that's where all the major tech companies all congregate. And the reason they do that is because it's become like a hub of, if you are into tech, you need to be in that place. Facebook's there, Twitter's there, Google's there, Huawei's there, whoever it is. I don't know if Huawei's there, actually. Samsung are there, Apple are there. If you want the best people, they're going to be in that area. So you need to be able to be in that area, in that space yourself, to be able to attract the best people and things like that. So they need extremely skilled people. They don't just want the average Joe. They want the best of the best of the best for Google, because they can afford it, and why not? You can see the differences that Google have made in the world, and that's what they continue to do. Number 3 is your ice cream man. Why is he so dependent on infrastructure? Seems like a pretty obvious one, doesn't it? If he didn't have good infrastructure, he wouldn't be able to get around. He wouldn't be able to sell his product. Remember, extremely seasonal business. Ice cream, but ultimately does massively sort of rely on the infrastructure of the place. We don't want somewhere that you can't get anywhere near the beach. If there's going to be a lot of people on the beach, if it's going to be a sunny day, you need to be able to get close to the beach. The closer you can get, if you can get right on the beach, then that's fantastic, because people will, come right to you. If you need to go way out of your way to do it, it's just not going to be viable for you to do, is it? And then you're gonna have to find another thing. And also, if you notice that the ice cream man comes round, doesn't he? They sort of come down the road and things like that. So they need to physically bring their product to you. It's vitally important, isn't it? And a prestigious golf club, we've got image of the area, vitally important. Just the same as, to an extent, we've got the M&S at the top, but theirs is more important that they have access to people. Whereas the prestigious golf club, people will travel for, but it's most important for them that they are surrounded by other very, very high-end things and very, very high-end houses, high-end area, hotels, or whatever it is that they're choosing to do. But ultimately, it's got to be a very high-class place, because we know that people are going to pay a premium to come and see this. All right. So, we're nearly there. As I said, it's not going to be a dead long stream today, because it's not a massive bit of the spec, to be honest, so we're not going to, keep going on about it. Let's have a little look at this one. So we've got optimization of location, or they maybe need, for some companies, to compromise between factors, as it may not be possible to reap the benefits of all of them in one location. For example, a paper shop operating in a busy town centre may get the benefits for more customers, but it's likely to be far away from their suppliers located in the rural forest land. Does that make sense? You might get more. You are benefiting from one area, but you are not benefiting from the other alternatives of being in that place. It's not. You can't get the perfect location for everything. It's never going to work. So the compromise will help you evaluate the location. So this is what they're looking for you to do in this exam. They're looking for you to constantly tell me, why is it better for them? Why is it not better for them? Is there a perfect location for them? Well, no, there isn't. So just the same as we always say, there's no way of guaranteeing success. It's to what extent does it guarantee success? Well, to some extent it guarantees success. To some extent it doesn't. So location decisions are also extremely important because of their long-term nature. Reasons why it's such a long-term decision include cost. Relocation is an expensive process, so it should not be done on a frequent basis. I've been involved with this when we relocated a business. It's not. It's very stressful. You've got to think about the infrastructure links. You've got to think about people getting to work. You've got to think about, it's an absolute headache. And it went from me going on the train every day to after having a lift every day because I couldn't physically drive at the time to get to work. It wouldn't have been as difficult if I was, but ultimately there wasn't much thought given to the staff at the time. Customer base as well. All businesses want to establish a customer base. For most firms, maintaining consistency in their location is a factor. Now, for some businesses, it's not. If it's just online, if it's Amazon or something like that, it's not really an issue. But they're so unusual to just have businesses that have no physical presence at all. Obviously, the more internet stuff that we get now, the more it's going to change from that. So it's more the more we're getting used to these businesses that do have just online presences, and there's no need for them to have a physical location. But a lot of the time, we're still going to be in that situation where we say, well, no, we need a good physical location. We need it to be fit for purpose, and it's going to have to abide by those different factors that we talked about. Okay. it says as well, and we've got these things called footloose businesses, and footloose businesses are those that move from location to location, basing themselves wherever best suits their needs at a particular point in time. Can you think of any examples? We just talked about one, haven't we? Ice cream would be a brilliant footloose business. They don't specifically pick one area, they just move as and when. The people who run these little places that do food for festivals, like we said, they don't just have one festival they go to and they stay there all the time, even when they just set up in that field when the festival isn't on. They go to festival. DJs, people who, do live music, musicians, that kind of stuff. They're all footloose, aren't they? They just set up where they need to and things like that, and then they go from there. And also places you could say stuff like TV companies as well, at making TV shows. They do it very much, don't they? But you can come up with your own ideas. There are businesses though, aren't they, that move about. They don't have that one location. And finally, last thing I want to talk to you about today, really, before we have a little look at the news, is international factors. So maximising economies of scale is a big one, isn't it? So are we in the ability to, sell overseas? Are we wanting to locate ourselves overseas or here? Because we want to get maximise those economies of scale. And remember, we're not just talking about purchasing economies of scale. We're talking about things like management economies of scale, education economies of scale. We want to be putting ourselves in a place where we get the right staff, the right management to make the right decisions. Hopefully we will benefit from that. The cost of transport, in some places it's cheaper. Why in America do they all drive around in massive gas guzzling cars? It's because it's a lot cheaper to get petrol and diesel there than it is in the UK. They have hell of a lot less tax on it, so they can all drive around in the tanks. And in the UK, it's very expensive to really drive anything. So if you're in the US, I'd say go for it. Don't worry about it having big gas guzzling things, because your costs to them would be not extremely low, but it would be a hell of a lot lower than in the UK. We've got free trade. Whether we've got free trade, as I said, we've got a bit of an issue with the EU now and what we're going to do there, because we did have free trade agreements with them, but we're not going to. So we are going to suffer because of that, the fact we've not got them. But remember, the government's promised us that we're going to have all these brilliant trade agreements with all these other countries that haven't materialised, but fingers crossed they do, because I don't know what we're going to do if we don't have them. And remember, we are an island and we need to import more stuff. I don't know. We used to be able to do a lot more, but there's no way that we'd be able to feed this country from our own farmland, especially when we just got rid of a load of the our foreign workforce that actually picked it. Have you seen that? They're actually asking for farmers now. They're actually asking for people to go onto farms and pick berries and stuff like that. That's what those immigrants that you hated, that's what they were doing. So when people start realising that, wait a minute, what do you mean the NHS is falling to bits because we needed all these immigrants weren't the negative, they were actually a really positive influence on the UK, which they were saying at the time. Remember, we said they were net positive contributors to the economy. They didn't take more than they gave, they actually gave more than they took, and doing those jobs that people don't want to do. But the decision has been made in our infinite wisdom. The country made that decision, so there's no point of crying about it now. We're just going to get on with it, aren't we? If the country decides to shoot itself in the foot, then we'll go with that. But we it remains to be seen. Perhaps I'll be wrong. Perhaps we'll have a fantastic thing. I don't know where it's going to come from, but perhaps there's this, everyone's going to get a free unicorn soon, so let's have a look at that. We've got taxes. Is it best to get on places? An interesting one that was in the news. We might actually cover it in a minute, but there is a couple of countries that have actually said that they're not going to be furloughing. They're not going to be able to, they're not giving out, subsidies and furloughing people who are companies that use tax havens. And you think, yeah, good on you. Yeah, time to screw them over. The only problem is that if those companies decide to screw their own employees over, I mean, rather than doing that now, they'd be better at fixing the tax system to not allow these businesses to use tax havens rather than trying to do it now. But I think fair play, good on them for trying. Wage levels, remember, you want to be paying the lowest you can if you can, because you're minimising those costs, aren't you? Remember the variable costs, the cost of sales. It's quite a big, significant part of any of businesses, total costs, isn't it? So it is something that we want to minimise. The worry of doing that though is you don't want it to massively affect way people see your business, or that massively affect the quality or anything like that for your business. So you've got to be wary of that. Be careful of putting your wages too low or going to foreign countries where it's too low, because you are going to have to deal with the reputational aspects of that. And finally, the business restrictions as well. Obviously, it depends on the place. You know, we've had these big things about being more eco-friendly and things like that, haven't we, over the last couple of years? And there are places that are a lot further on it than we are. So, you know, in the future, we might be, you know, maybe we'll make the UK into a tax haven, and that's how we'll sort of attract foreign markets into to investing in this place. I don't know. But ultimately, at this moment in time, there's a range of international factors there, isn't there? International things are an option, but be careful, because it's not easy to go into international markets and just, you know, set up. You are going to have issues of cultural differences and things like that as well. Hello. So we're going to have a little look at the news. I know it's a much shorter stream today, but again, I don't want to be going over crazy amounts of stuff when it's as simple as that. You've got the books, you can have a little look at it. I'd rather spend more time on things like break even and things like that, because it's a little bit more difficult, isn't it, to understand. So let's have a look at the news. I will just pop it on, and we'll have a look at what's going on in the world. Let's have a look. Or rather, not what's happening in the world, more what's happening in the UK. Let's have a look. Cheaper clothes see UK inflation fall to 1.5%. Inflation, remember, is the time value of money. The UK's inflation rate fell to 1.5% in March, largely driven by falls in the price of clothing and fuel ahead of the coronavirus lockdown. Consumer price index fell from 1.7% in February. Remember, this means that companies are actively reducing their costs, reducing the price of things to try and stimulate growth in the economy. Unfortunately, that's not really a massive thing. People don't care about this. We were talking about elasticity of demand yesterday. This is the weird thing at the minute. Usually, very elastic products like clothes and things like that would be significantly impacted by you changing the price. But at this time, they're not. They're not changed by massively, because the people aren't buying them anywhere because of an external factor. So it's a strange one. We're living in crazy times at the minute. But if you have a look at inflation here, consumer price index, this is what we had, which is good for a certain amount of people, because remember, if you're not getting above inflationary pay increases, then at least it's going to be bringing that down to here. I mean, more people will be getting pay increases that will be down here rather than up here. So that's good. You know, at least you're not going to be losing any value of your money in real terms. So it's something that, that's a positive, I suppose. But yeah, so that is a weird one. It shows that price elasticity sort of affecting them, right there, doesn't it? What's this one? RAF plane lands in UK with PPE from Turkey. An RAF aircraft has landed in the UK with a delayed delivery of personal protective equipment from Turkey amid a row over a shortage in the NHS. A flight arrived in the RAF Bryce Norton in the early hours of Wednesday morning and is believed to contain about half of the promised kit. Other RAF planes are said to be on standby to collect the rest. The delivery was originally expected to arrive on Sunday, but has been due to 400,000 surgical gowns. However, Turkey's ambassador to the UK said the government only learned about the deal with a private company on Sunday and insisted it had done everything to help. Well, yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? This is the thing about not talking to each other and being like, oh yeah, we don't need other countries, blah, blah, blah. We're supposed to be working together. I don't understand. This is not a time for politics, is it? Tops and joggers in the Boohoo lockdown sales boom. It says online fashion retailer Boohoo says it's found a new way of thriving in the corona lockdown by making people look good on video conference calls. The firm said it has seen a rise in sales on smart tops as people working from home needed to keep appearances on camera in front of their colleagues. That's a good point. I mean, that's innovation, isn't it? That's looking at situations. That's relating to adequately reacting to situations and making the best of a bad job. It says sales of tops have gone up in particular, with everyone wanting to look smart on Zoom calls. Not only have Boohoo's products been well received, but on Monday the firm apologised for its range of fashion face masks caused an outcry. So they've not been doing everything particularly well, but interesting concept, yeah. Personally, I don't care. Look, I'm just dressed as I would with, I'm not purposely trying to look smart or anything like that. But yeah, if you need to wear a shirt and tie or something like that. Let's have another look. Let's have a look at the business news. Who wins and loses when oil prices fall? Another thing. But here we are. Netflix gets 16 million new sign-ups thanks to lockdown. Remember, it's not always a bad thing, just the same as recessions. It can be sometimes a good thing. Netflix has seen a subscriber number surge this year as lockdown around the world keeps people at home who want to be entertained. Almost 16 million people created accounts in the first 3 months of the year. The firm said it's almost double the new sign-ups for the first final months of 2019. However, the streaming service, which is behind some multi-million-dollar productions, said shutdowns have halted almost all filming around the world. That is true. It is going to be an issue, isn't it? And this is the point, isn't it? This is the location we're talking about. It said, ultimately, whilst access to their products, because it's online, is really unaffected, they've got a massive issue of being able to access raw materials. And the raw materials for this company is people making programs. So we're going to have a massive issue going forward, aren't we? Because there will be a big blip, there will be a big amount of time after this where there's going to be no new TV programs because we're going to be using them up now. A lot of stuff's halted on movies and things like that. So we are probably going to see a big dip. It says, what's this? Demand for streaming has been so high that Netflix last month said it would reduce the quality of its videos in Europe to ease strain on internet providers, hired an additional 2,000 customer support staff to handle an increased interest. The documentary Tiger King reached 64 million households. I watched that. Did you watch that? Mental. Absolutely crazy. I'm annoyed there wasn't more of it, though, because it was interesting and just crazy. Let's do one more. Let's have a look at one more thing for today. Doesn't look like it's been a particularly massive day for news, to be honest. Oh, no, I haven't seen this. Virgin Australia slumps into administration, it says. Virgin Australia has confirmed that it's entered voluntary administration, making it Australia's first big corporate casualty of the coronavirus pandemic. The country's second largest carrier cut almost all flights last month following a widespread travel ban. It's already been struggling with a long-term £5 billion debt, or $5 billion, sorry. The airline is now seeking new buyers and investors after failing to get a loan from Australia's government. Virgin Australia Chief Executive Paul Scurra said, our decision today is about securing the future of Virgin Australia Group and emerging on the other side of the COVID-19 crisis. I mean, this is the point, isn't it? This is the straw that's brought the camels back for a lot of businesses, but a lot of the time, these businesses are about to go under anyway. So it's not, this is the point, isn't it? Us as business analysts, we can see these kind of things affecting people. And we know that that is realistic that businesses do fail consistently, and in these ever changing world that we live in, it's particularly difficult to maintain any kind of competitive advantage and things like that when people are constantly trying to undercut you. So we're going to leave it there today. I know it's slightly shorter stream than usual, but as I said, we did location factors. It's not a massive thing. It's an important thing, and it's something that you can have a look at your books for, but it's not something that I want to spend days and days on. Okay, guys, so thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoy it. I will see you at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Peace.